So I just watched Revolution of the Daleks and it was pretty good. Definitely not what I was expecting, which is why I enjoyed the story. Originally I was going in with that the majority of the runtime would essentially be a Doctor Light story and it'd be up for the fam to stop the Daleks with Jack assisting along the way. And that's what the episode synopsis entailed, with how do you fight a Dalek without the Doctor, and well, they kind of lied. Don't get me wrong, the scenes with 13 in prison was perfect, but I did feel like though it was one of those classic RTD Christmas openers where the cliffhangers in the previous finale were resolved too quickly. I do feel like though that escaping the prison will create some severe consequences for 13, especially since we got a leaked video of some Series 13 filming and it showed a prison tag on her ankle. Removing the element of the story being Dr. Light kind of removes the sense of independence of the fan being able to do it themselves that the trailers were kind of hyping up. Although they didn't disappoint. Yaz and Ryan especially was bloody on the ball this story. Ryan scene with 13 was beautiful and I love that Ryan kind of symbolised the audience and that every time 13 was attempting to hide any emotion and sort of just not talk about anything, he'd be right on it. And that then we saw 13 open up and address how empty she feels after discovering the revelations of the Timeless Child arc. And I'm so happy that they didn't drop the story arc until series 13 and brought it up for a couple of scenes. Happy that it was Ryan that confronted her about it, seeing as Ryan was arguably the weakest character last season, with not exactly having any purpose in his dyscalculus story arc that was near the end anyway. The story I also feel like is some acknowledgement of the mixed reception the arc has had, and that change is scary, but once we face it together it isn't too bad. We was promised also that there'd be an introduction to a new arc for Yaz, and it's to do with her not exactly wanting to let go of the Doctor and travelling just yet. As the Series 13 arc was brilliantly introduced here, and it was interesting that the inclusion of Jack helped to make it blossom. And speaking of Jack, I liked his inclusion here. His scenes with Yaz were so lovely, and his mention of Gwen later on and his home planet Bon Shem Palencia was a nice nod to us Torchwood fans that was basically awaiting for some kind of mention. But I'm very disappointed at the fact that they brought up his immortality and did nothing with it. Like, come on, there was scene after scene where it could have happened, especially when he was on the Dalek ship, and it would have then brought some danger for Ryan or Graham if Jack was to be shot. I was worried that the usage of the Daleks would be poor, especially reading up on the press's early reception and how they said it was very much a character-driven story, but I'm absolutely loving how Chibnall is writing these Daleks, completely ruthless and definitely bringing back some of how they were like in the 60s. The returning factor of purity also was very interesting, and I love the vibes of remembrance we had with the government Daleks and the Battlefleet Daleks going against each other. But I did feel like Chibnall got a little too excited with how many Daleks he wanted, as how they were defeated felt kind of cheated, as I don't think every Dalek would have been stupid enough to swarm a TARDIS. But either way, these Daleks were very good, and how they was introduced into the story felt very good too, and made a lot of sense, which was a nice change of them just having to randomly be there in stories. I would have loved to see the government Daleks playing to their roles to then call up the battle fleet to maybe find that they don't accept them because of their impurity, or at least just playing to their roles. But oh well, Nick Briggs was great as always, and I do kind of like the new voice that he brings with the government Daleks. That very much reminded me of the Imperials in Remembrance. Jack Robinson is definitely better written here, being a villain that he just loved to hate, and his naivety when attempting to work a deal with the Daleks was pretty good. The departures of Ryan and Graham was lovely, okay. I'm a sucker for companion departures, as you always like to think it's an end of an era for a significant aspect of Who, and whilst it was cringy originally, I've kind of embraced the Doctor and her fam. Ryan's departure felt so genuine, and how he had essentially grown out of travelling, and it wasn't down to because he got sent to a parallel universe, fell in love with the Doctor but she didn't reciprocate her feelings back, so left, became part-time Lord, died to a weeping angel, died but is stuck in limbo and is now travelling in a TARDIS diner, or simply just became space particles flying around in space, but that he'd simply had his fun and wished to return back to his normal life. I have no problems with that. Graham's departure on the other hand did feel a little empty, especially since he didn't have much scenes to work with in this special, and it kind of felt like he was just following Ryan. 13 attempting to prevent the departures by wanting to travel back to fetch him earlier to prevent her 10-month absence. That was also why they wanted to leave. I love the 10-month absence that made them all quite angry initially in the story, and it was nice to see their family actually having some anger towards the Doctor. Yaz comforting her, saying that it's okay to be sad, was great, but interesting to see if we get more emotional 13 in the upcoming series. The final scene of the story was something beautiful, with Ryan, like in his first scene, riding on his bike on the same hill to a better success this time, and Graham chanting him on with his iconic line, which I think was a lovely nod from the crew to the fandom, who very much memed that scene. The ghostly figure of Grace was sweet, and overall it was a sweet departure that may have left some fans disappointed who awaited at least one of them dying, but I did like the less extreme choice. So, does this get my seal of approval? Yeah, it does have its flaws, and I will most definitely rewatch it, but it is a fun story with some lovely scenes, a good acknowledgement of the Timeless Child arc, and some to the past. But I just feel cheated with the quicker execution of 13 breaking out of prison and how they essentially clickbaited us. But it will be quite interesting to see a full female TARDIS crew in Series 30. Oh, right. We're going down this road, are we?